3 sculptures that I've made over the years in chronological order. And these are essentially all birds. And I like working in birds when making things because I think that showing a sort of linear progression of how you sculpt things while keeping the same sort of topic while trying to find new ways to twist the ideas is very interesting and something that I think shows growth in how you do the art. So I'm going to talk about this piece first. This is a hummingbird, and it was one of the very first pieces I made in Glass Flameworking in the first week that I started. So a hummingbird is usually thought of as very fast and very energy and hectic, right? And that's exactly how I felt when making this piece, because I was running around everywhere and everything was going absolutely crazy. And not only that, but at the very last second, on the very last connection I had to undo, the whole piece came crashing down to the ground and everything fell apart. And so it was even more crazy when I had to put it all together super quickly. And actually, you can sort of see that originally this was the foot of the hummingbird. And when it fell off, the hummingbird's foot got jettisoned from the body when I was trying to put it back together. And so they say hummingbirds actually can't move their feet. They can't walk. And I managed to move the foot of a hummingbird, showing that I can do the impossible in class. You just have to figure out how to adapt to the situation. And so one thing about the piece is that I have to always worry about this thing called stress, not only for myself, but also in class. So stress in glass is caused, especially when the piece is thick and when the piece has a ultimate color on it. So one thing you'll notice is that there's actually quite a few cracks in the hummingbird. And that was caused because the wings are actually very thick compared to the body, and I didn't keep enough heat on it. So that's something that I've learned and gotten better at. So this is my phoenix. And so for this one, I sort of decided to make a phoenix because I wanted to learn from my experiences, a fiery rebirth of a bird in flame, right? And so for this piece, I actually planned it beforehand. In that way, it was better, but it was also worse because I ended up keeping too close to my plans, and it ended up very complicated and crowded. And so the stress in this piece came mainly from having to put it all together at the end and worrying that it would fall all apart. And so you'll see here, the wings on this phoenix are actually made with many layers of glass, and I thought that was actually way too detailed. And I only realized at the end when I couldn't figure out how to balance the phoenix very well because the wings were just so bulky and it detracted too much of the piece. And then here, we'll look at my last piece. This is my piece for this year, the Fuego Program. Now, these are meant to be 2 doves on 2 branches. So I sort of went with a yin-yang motif with the colors, where I had one white flower with black stamen and a black flower with white stamen. And doves are usually meant as a symbol of peace, and yin and yang are meant to symbolize duality and peace. And I thought that in this time, that's something that we need to keep in mind. But not only that, with this piece, it was actually very unstressful. I managed to plan it beforehand while also being able to adapt to time constraints and any issues that we had. So in this piece, not only did we manage to get rid of a lot of the stress in the piece, it will not crack, but also it was a lot easier, and I think that's something I really enjoy working with. And so you'll notice that the wings on this piece are very large, but simple. They're very noticeable, but there's not a lot of color or a lot of things that would cause stress, right? Because the thicker it is and the more color, the more stress. And so I sort of went with a simple design that would be not stressful to do, make, or to the piece. So I'm going to show you how I made my wings this year. So this is an oxygen propane torch. And this is how we make pieces in the flame working. So turn it on. And I'm going to grab 2 of these rods and make gathers. And so this is how I made my wings this year. And one thing that was sort of interesting is that originally I planned to make the wings with 3 feathers, like you see now. But I actually attached them to a second piece where it would be coming out of. However, because I managed to have time to test it beforehand, I figured out that that design didn't work out very well, and it actually was very stressful on the piece to add so much glass onto one middle piece and then make that into the So you see there how it's sort of bubbling? I'm going to actually take that part off because that's inherent bubbles in the glass. And that can actually, like I've been saying, add stress to it. So I've been talking about how I like making my wings very prominent, and there's a few reasons for that. So one is just inherently, I think the idea of flight and freedom is very cool. And I've always been entranced by birds and how they look. And so that's sort of what I modeled it off of. But also, wings are a very good way to make your piece look more complicated while not adding a lot of stress to the piece. I keep bringing that up because it's the main component in trying to figure out how to plan your pieces when making them in glass. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm heating up 2 rods of glass at the very tips. And so glass is essentially a fluid when it gets hot. So as long as you keep the heat on the tip, it'll slowly form something called a gap, where it starts to ball up. Glass inherently loves to ball up into almost a perfect sphere, because that's the way stress is shaped. There we go again. And so in order to make the wings, I'm going to make 2 balls of glass, smash them, and then pull them into feathers. And so what you'll see here is that if you used to see a bunch of orange on the flame, now you'll probably be able to see what's going on in the fire a lot better. And we glass workers use these glasses in order to look at the flame directly, because we're staring at this bright light for hours on end. So this will get rid of all the orange hue and make it so the glass looks sort of pinkish, and also make it so the glass is a lot more visible. So I have about the right size in my right wing, but the left one is actually a little bit small. So I'm going to gather that a little bit more before finishing. Okay. So I'm going to set this down after twirling it a little. If I set it down right now, it might flop to the side because the glass is so low. So this is called a graphite pad, and essentially graphite tools do not burn, or they don't. It's okay to put them in the fire, and so it's okay to smash molten hot glass with them, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I essentially made a lollipop. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull the glass. And in order to do that, I need to be able to hold it from both ends. So I'm going to do what's called a hot seal, where I keep both sides of the glass, so it's basically a very nice seal in the glass. And then I keep both sides of the lollipop so it's nice and liquid in order to pull. And there's different techniques. So I like starting to pull the flame and taking it out and pulling. And so this will be the top feather of my wing. Now originally, I had it where I made 3 gathers with 3 little feathers on my wing. But actually, if by accident or by fortune, I accidentally cut one of these feathers in half, well, in 2/3 and 1/3, while making one of the wings. And I figured out that actually gives it perfect proportions to what I wanted. So I kept that for every single wing that I made. And it's little things that you stumble upon like that, that make it so all planning that you made beforehand gets thrown out the window usually. But as long as you know generally what you're doing and you can adapt your plan, things will end up okay. And that's one of my favorite things about this, because with glass, you're not the one who's leading. This glass will lead you on a slow, molten, very, very viscous journey, and you just have to follow its lead. So I'm going to smash this now. And we have a second lollipop. Once again, I'm going to hot seal, getting both of them very warm. Nothing in the fire. And then I'm going to heat both ends of the lollipop in order to structure it. So this time I'm actually going to pull this into 2 pieces. So I'm heating the middle again. So I can pull it right there. So this will be my center, and this will be the bottom. So I'm actually going to tap it right now. You'll notice it started to flow. That was actually my bad. I pulled it a little too thin. That should be okay as long as I do it. So you notice how here it's starting to flop a little. So I'm actually going to pull that off here and just hold it by this. Now I'm going to attach that top one. So once again, I keep both parts that I want to attach together. Wait till it's nice and glowing. Catch it in the fire. Pull. And then I'm going to cut this part off. Actually, no, I'm going to cut this part off. And then you'll notice that at the end of each of these very thin wings is sort of a ball shape. And that's what I was saying. When you heat up glass, it likes to ball up like that. And so in order to get rid of that, you could either use tweezers, you squeeze up in the fire, and you pull, and so it has a much cleaner end, or you can use another piece of glass. And so this is where I would heat, right here, to attach it to the bird, and then I would cut it off here. And that's how I made all the wings on my bird this year. Thank you for listening.